The natural elements of the universe have been celebrated, feared, and even worshipped. Mystics sought communion with the earth, air, fire, and water, and learned to tap into their raw power. In time, these spiritual guides came to understand that nature's elemental forces aren't wholly benevolent, but have been locked in an unending conflict of chaos and primal fury that once consumed the physical realm. So began the calling of the Shaman, to bring balance to these volatile energies, leveraging their intensity to mend wounds or to inflict them, to protect. Well, sort of. Not really. Actually, you better put that rock back down.
Big howdy energy to you, kind viewer. My name is Fancy, and I've decided to start using my free time to make videos that could really make a difference, to help right the wrongs of the world, or in this case, to help Blizzard fix their game. Now there's a long list of things about WoW that deserve attention, adjustment or just modernization. And to be fair, the game has been out for almost 20 years now. Frankly, it's a miracle that the engine it's built upon hasn't imploded throughout the decades. That being said, most of the things that I'd like to talk about aren't necessarily massive overhauls to the game's design and function, but relatively low-hanging fruit. And I'd like to start with the very controversial and unpopular opinion that Shaman should have a tanking spec. Oh, actually, hang on. Yes, I'm being told that this is actually an incredibly popular opinion asked for by nearly everybody since the Burning Crusade. Yikes. Now, there are a lot of reasons why this is a good idea, mechanically and thematically, but let's start with class identity. Now, Shamans are the masters of the elements. Their current specs represent this identity well. Enhancement is mostly associated with air, Elemental is mostly associated with fire, and Restoration is mostly associated with water. All Shaman specs use bits from each elemental domain, but there is a clear lack of an Earth-focused spec. This is a no-brainer for a thematically aligned extension to the class. And then there's the lore. There are numerous cases of shamans acting as protectors, but perhaps the most relevant to the upcoming expansion is the elemental identity of the Black Dragonflight. The Black Dragonflight was charged with the protection of the Earth. After the events of Cataclysm, nearly all of the Black Dragonflight is dead. Now, there's a huge opportunity for the inclusion of a shaman tanking spec to be closely tied with rebuilding the Black Dragonflight. Now, we obviously don't know the story of Dragonflight yet, or what might be involved with the Black Dragonflight, but I don't think it would be too much of a stretch to include a few quests in association with shamans gaining the mastery of the Earth, to assume the mantle of protecting Azeroth once more. Then, of course, we can't talk about shaman tanking without talking about how it already sort of existed. Back in vanilla, when shamans and paladins were exclusive to the Horde and the Alliance, respectively, shamans had the ability to off-tank, sort of, to act as the Horde analog for the Alliance paladin's role. Shamans could more or less tank with the right gear and some creative totem and threat management, and it wasn't really until Cataclysm, when the defense stat was removed from the game, that shamans really couldn't tank anymore, and it was more or less officially abandoned. Tanking was a part of the shaman's class design in WoW pretty much from the beginning. And we would very much like it returned. Thank you very much, Blizzard. And then there's the mechanics of the shaman. Shamans have access to really powerful tools that could be adjusted to fit the tanking role specifically, without the need for a large number of new animations or skill design. To preserve DPS utility roles, should a shaman gain a tanking spec, something like heroism or bloodlust would likely need to be altered, maybe as a tanking cooldown. Things like reincarnation could be a cheat death mechanic similar to Demon Hunters. Restoration's Earth Shield, Enhancement's Rockbiter, the elemental earthquake. These could all be tweaked and retooled for a shaman tank. With the return of the talent system, this could be an excellent opportunity to bring this spec into the game. There does not need to be any retroactive spec-related game adjustments for Legion artifacts or anything. The spec could be easily, thematically tied to the Dragon Isles. Look, if you really need to, make the spec only accessible through a quest line in the Dragon Isles or something. I don't know. The people want it. Anytime additional specs have been mentioned since the Burning Crusade, one of, if not the most requested spec is Shaman tanking. Its existence has been asked for nearly the entirety of the game's existence. I mean, look, this person's even willing to sub for an entire year if you include Shaman tanking, Blizzard. How can you leave that kind of money on the table? Some may suggest that it would be unfair for Shaman to get a fourth spec that would enable them to melee DPS, range DPS, heal, and tank. And I'm sorry, but that's the Druid class fantasy. Druid got 4 specs because Feral was the only spec that was filling 2 roles, some people might say. Yeah, well, Enhancement was supposed to be doing that too with off-tanking. It just wasn't ever really effective tanking raid bosses, as warriors were, so it was more or less forgotten about. But in all seriousness, Blizzard already set the precedent for 4 spec with Druid long ago, and the fact that there are 3 leather tanks before a single mail-wearing tank is the greater injustice in my book. But what about the other classes? Yeah, there are a lot of specs that make a tremendous amount of sense for several classes out there. But Shaman Tank is in a league of its own in this arena. The thematic justification is just a no-brainer. I implore Blizzard to make this a thing. Giving Shaman a 4th spec could open the doors to future specs in the game for other classes. Something a lot of people, myself included, think would be better for WoW than a new class every few expansions. Some people argue that Blizzard can't balance the existing specs and adding more would make that even worse. Perhaps, but we should stop treating Blizzard like a small indie developer. They are a multi-billion-dollar company that absolutely has the resources to add more specs to the game and manage them correctly. And with that being said, thank you for coming to my TED Talk. I really love Shaman, but I also really love tanking. And I can't think of a better opportunity to tie this into the game for Blizzard than the Dragon Isles. So what do you think it should be called? That's really the important question here. I'd wager it's something like Earth Warder, maybe. Preservation? No. What if we summon a floaty rock shield? Kind of like, I don't know, like a Death Knight's bone armor or something. That'd be really cool. Oh, what if the Earthquake could be like an AoE stomp skill like Thunderclap? Maybe they could go ahead and give Enhancement their 2-handed weapons while they're at this.